I'm Mike.
I'm Sam.
I'm Jack.
Let's get into it.
MVP Stetson Bennett is joining us live. Stetson, good morning, my friend. How you feeling this morning after that incredible performance last night? Have you had a chance to get any sleep?
Yeah, a few hours. Not many. I've been wondering about. Not many.
Welcome to episode 65 of Gentlemen Sweep Sports. We had a massive sports day the other day on Monday night. We had the national championship, Alabama versus Georgia. And Georgia won the national championship for the first time since 1980 when they were led by running back Herschel Walker, Heisman winner, NFL. I don't know if he's like an NFL legend, but he's part of NFL lore because he's one of the biggest trades of NFL history. That's for another time. But Georgia wins 33-18 against Alabama. Stetson Bennett's named MVP. What are your guys? I'll ask you, Jack, first. What is your initial thought on this game?
I kind of feel like Alabama lost it more than Georgia won it, just because of Williams and Mechie being out, and then clearly this was the game that, the two losses of their season were the games that Bama really saw their problem with having Bill O'Brien being their offensive coordinator. This and the A&M game, it's just the inability to convert, third and threes, third and fours, third and twos, and just their laziness is, I guess that's how I'll put it, running the ball. This kind of just running it on first down or second and 10 to run it, nothing, like there's so much speed on the field, especially in this game, how fast Georgia is, how fast the Bama players are. And you got to be creative with your runs and your short plays. And it's just no motions, nothing to get guys open. And when you have all these freshmen out there covering for Williams and Mechie, you're not giving your guys a chance.
Yeah, absolutely. I love how you started the conversation out with Bill O'Brien, because I think that's where the conversation needs to start. I was really surprised watching this game, seeing how Georgia's offensive scheme and game plan, in my opinion, was significantly better than Alabama's offensive scheme. Alabama's offense really reminded me with Deshaun Watson and the Texans, where it's like Bryce Young, you hold on to the ball for 3 seconds. You need to snap through your reads. We have pretty simple pro concepts in terms of the receiving routes. And I just thought it was no helping out Bryce Young. Watching Stetson Bennett, it was quick reads, first read throws, and then they would set up the deep ball with a one-on-one. A good example of that was in the fourth quarter when he connected on that 30-yard fade in the end zone, which was a significant play in that game. There was really nothing like that with the Alabama offense, those quick setups to set up the deep ball. So I think that's really where Alabama lost the game, was the offensive scheme.
I mean, but you could say it was the offensive scheme, but also Georgia's defense is just incredible. They played great all year. They were the best team or defense in the nation, and they just held Alabama. I know Alabama had injuries. Jameson Williams, probably one of the best receivers in the nation right now. He tore his ACL at the beginning of the game, and on that big play. I mean, this game was a slugfest from the first half was just an absolute slugfest. Only field goals. The two only big plays was, I just previously mentioned, the Jameson Williams, and then the Pickens on Georgia, who had that 40-yard catch. Like, nothing was happening for either team. So you could say it was, an issue with Bill O'Brien not calling these plays well enough. But Georgia wasn't getting anything on offense either. So it was kind of Bama's defense was keeping them in the game. It was close until Georgia broke it open in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, it was crazy how Bama just couldn't finish a couple of their drives that would have just completely changed the game. And just how, to be within 1-2 points of each other with the missed 2 point, just no margin for error. And if it's really Bama, if they could have just converted one of those goal line stands, it would have been obviously they would have been in such better shape. But that's how close they were without Williams and Mechie, who are clearly the keys, because like you said, Sam, Georgia's defense is absurd. They have probably 4 or 5 NFL first round picks, and probably everyone else will be a draft pick. And but the key was beating them over the top with Williams and Mechie, and you lose both those guys, and you just Bryce Young is just out there for himself.
Yeah, absolutely. I think those injuries were pretty significant. I thought the blocked field goal was pretty significant. I want to say that was Georgia's third blocked field goal of the season. And I hate to say a team wanted it more and gave more effort, but I couldn't help but think after that long touchdown in the fourth quarter that I referred to earlier, it just seemed as though the Alabama defense mentally and physically didn't check out per se, but were less intense than the Georgia defense was in the fourth quarter. I thought that last Georgia touchdown where I want to say Stetson Bennett threw a check down to the left to his tight end and he kind of just walked in. I thought that was pretty poor effort by Alabama. And on the other side of the ball, Georgia was just flying around all game. Bryce Young, I did like his performance, but he kind of had the Matt Stafford syndrome where he loved his pre-snap read and post-snap. His pre-snap read would be incorrect, but he would throw it there anyway. I think that was some of his interceptions and certainly the last interception of the game for him.
I mean, I feel like that last interception, he was just, throwing it into oblivion. Like that was kind of just, let's see if I can make something out of nothing. But, then you love seeing that play because I think his name was Ringo. Shout out Ringo Starr. He intercepts the ball. Kirby Smart's, jumping up and down, telling him to get down, and he just runs for a pick six. So, I'm not a fan of either of these teams, but it was really fun, seeing Georgia win the national championship. I just want to go back to one key play in this game. I mean, I think it's one of the worst calls in sports history, maybe with Stetson Bennett, clearly his arm's going forward and they call it a fumble. And then that Bama defender nonchalantly grabs it with one foot in bounds. I mean, that was the only touchdown that Bama was able to get all game, but I just think that call was awful. And it really didn't have any effect on the outcome of the game, but still, I was not a fan of that call.
No, Sam, that's actually a great point you bring that up because it seemed like it was just going to be some Alabama cheese. That's the only way I can describe it. Because remember the Bryce Young, I think it was an incomplete pass, but we were having a huge debate watching the game. This is clearly where you need the sky judge for they want to go get in and review it. Like the sky judge calls in, he's like, nope, that's an incomplete pass, but that should be an intentional grounding. So this is where you add penalties. Like that's what it totally should have been. And the fact that they even thought about giving, and they actually did give the ball back to Bama on that, what a terrible call that I thought was just going to ruin what was not a great game, but a solid game. And then you get Georgia end up winning. And that call could have just made the night ruined.
Awful call. I'm very glad I watched this game in live time again because I think it was so clearly an incomplete pass. Just the trajectory of the ball, the distance of the ball, his hand going forward. I think it was clearly an incomplete pass. But watching it back on like Instagram and Twitter, there were a lot of videos that I don't want to say they were blatantly like manipulated with, but the angle made it so that you would be more prone to argue, maybe it was a fumble, but I think watching it in live time, watching it with the full field, I think it was very clearly an incomplete pass.
Yeah, I mean, Stetson Bennett, I think he played a pretty great game. I mean, his story is incredible. We can get into that a little more later, but yeah, that call kind of was a stain on his white tux that he had this whole game. He played great, and then he has that fumble. But getting a little more into Stetson Bennett, the kid walks on at Georgia. His parents both went to Georgia. He always wanted to go to Georgia. He walks on. Unfortunately, Justin Fields is the quarterback, Jake Fromm, so he transfers to a junior college. Goes back to Georgia, beats out a 5-star in JT Daniels. I mean, this is one of the most miraculous sports story in recent memory. But the thing is, sad enough to say, and what makes college football so special is he's probably not going to have an NFL job come 2 years. So I think that's what just makes college football so special.
Yeah, and I mean to be a walk-on for Georgia, and I mean we talked about before that Good Morning America interview. I mean that was just everything. That kid was living the best life. I mean to be a Georgia hero with that that's background, that whole story is just great.
Yeah, I want to say he was a huge Georgia fan growing up as well, which just makes it that more special. But hey, guys, watch out. I'm telling you right now, Stetson Bennett to Antonio Brown in the USFL. Stetson Bennett for USFL MVP. I'm calling my shots right now. I think he'll be a star in the USFL.
I would love to see him in the USFL. I mean, I honestly didn't even know the USFL was like a thing until like 2 months ago. I feel like they were like secretly planning this, but I would love to see Stetson Bennett in the USFL. I know Antonio Brown was reached out by Todd Hale and he said like, screw off, I'm not playing in your league. So sad to say that, but there'll probably be some NFL talent. I know Devin Smith was in the Alliance and he was pretty good in the NFL for a little bit. So maybe
Isn't the XFL the XFL wants to come back too, right?
XFL 3.0. I think commissioners like The Rock or something.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was about to say The
Rock.
Rock.
So, getting into next year for college football, do you think like is Bama – we can't say that Bama is, initially out of being this powerhouse again next year, but is Georgia like – is it hard to say that Georgia isn't the team to beat next year?
I think that Georgia is definitely going to be better than you think they would be for losing all these guys. I mean, what, you're going to lose Jordan Davis, Nakobe Dean, Nolan Smith. I mean, that's 3 first round Walker. That's 3 or 4 first round picks right there on defense. And I think you lose Pickens, but you get Bowers back, another year of him, some of the young receivers. But I mean, it's just Alabama. I mean, the fact that Bryce Young and Anderson are coming back for them. I mean, they really just need to figure out the receiver spot. Like the Dallas Turner, the freshman linebacker they have, he was flying around all game. He's going to be gross play for them next year. Kool-Aid McKinstry, they have plenty of young guys who are going to learn from this in typical Bama fashion.
Yeah, I love what Nick Saban said before the press conference after losing the game, that you guys aren't defined by this one loss. I think this game for Bryce Young in his own mind will define him as, I need to get better after this game. I need to absolutely grow as a player, and I'm going to go out in the offseason, have a great offseason, have a great season. Even though, again, I think Bryce Young's performance was good in this game. I just don't think he had help. Obviously, again, like we said, the injuries had a pretty major factor in this game, along with the game plan by Bill O'Brien. But I do really like Alabama going into next season. With Georgia, I don't think it's going to be quite a 2020 LSU situation where your entire team is absolutely gutted. Your receivers are gone for the most part, and Jamar Chase didn't even return for that last season. And LSU just spiraled out of control in 2020 and 2021. I think Georgia is going to, again, be a really good team next year. And I think if I had to bet right now, I think they would make the playoffs.
Yeah, Alabama, they don't fall apart. They just reload year after year. They just reload more and more talent. We don't, there's so many unknowns at wide receiver for them now with Jameson Williams gone probably. But I think they'll just next man up. They have so many studs across that board, so it doesn't really affect them. But I do think Bryce Young will have a pretty, intense Heisman campaign next year, potentially, winning back-to-back. He'll be, if he does that, he'll be the second time double Heisman Trophy winner with, Archie Griffin. But I think Georgia, I think they might start off the year a little sluggish with some players that they lose, but Georgia's always top 3 in recruiting classes. So it's not like LSU, who, really struggled to get recruits, high-end recruits. Like that 2019 team was loaded, and then the next year they were awful, like you said, Michael. So I think Georgia will probably make the playoff as well next year.
Yeah, I think you guys are probably right. Georgia and the SEC just seems like they're gonna have 2 teams, and Georgia just seems like the best bet. But I mean, I remember coming into this season, the favorites were Georgia because you knew they were gonna have all this talent, and then Oklahoma because of their quarterback coming back, and obviously Oklahoma fell on their face because you just could not believe what happened to Spencer Rattler. I mean, talk about falling off the face of the earth. He was supposed to be the next Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, but my point is that now you have Bama and Ohio State. Of course, we find a way to bring Ohio State up, but both those teams coming back with a quarterback that, I mean, for Bama obviously has won the Heisman. Ohio State faithful that their quarterback could do the same thing next season. It's gonna be tough for Georgia, especially with Bama and Ohio State getting older. I mean, the teams, if the way they play football with their stuffing defense that's just filled with dogs, that takes a year or 2 to build up. And, there's going to be a year where you can't rely on a Stetson Bennett. You're going to need that quarterback. And until Georgia makes that transition, I feel like it's going to be every other year for them. One year they're just absurd, and then another year they're not as good, but they come through the trials of the SEC, and they'll be there on a New Year's Six bowl. But who knows?
I think that's a great point you bring up, Jack. I think looking at a team like Ohio State, I absolutely loved the season from CJ Stroud, not because it was a absolutely flawless, incredible season by him. He had his ups and downs, but I like how he struggled a little bit early, kind of got benched. He was banged up, but kind of got benched, came back and really finished the year very strongly. Again, Ohio State getting more comfortable with their younger players, getting older, as you said. I think they're a team that you can almost chalk up to be in the final dance, the Final Four. So stuff like that is not a good look for Georgia. I kind of compare it to what I viewed the Knicks as, not to talk about basketball too extensively, but I was really nervous about the Knicks coming into the season because of the teams that missed the playoffs. I know we're going to make it, such as the Bulls. So that's kind of how I look at it with Georgia. I just think there are teams that didn't make the playoffs this season in college football that I'm very confident to make the playoffs next year.
Yeah, but I just think like what teams, Oklahoma's not going to be, they fell apart. They're just a non-playoff team. So we'll go like what are our way too early top four for the national or the college football playoff? Alabama, no particular order. Alabama, Ohio State. Like what I don't know if Michigan's going to make it if Harbaugh leaves or if we beat them. It's tough to say Georgia's completely out of the national championship when, off the top of my head, I don't know what teams would be better than them to make the playoff.
Yeah,
I feel like a Clemson, just not to cut you off, Michael. I think Clemson's a team to watch for next year. They next year is kind of the test of their program for me, with the next phase of where they go after these. Obviously that great run, 2 championships, and I mean they obviously have DJ and all his potential, but he was pretty bad this year. They got this 5-star kid coming in, Cole Kupnick. I'm not saying his name right, but who knows if he's a Trevor Lawrence and plays as a freshman. They got a lot of defensive players who were hurt last year coming back. I think they've got a chance to be one of those playoff teams, and then maybe someone emerges from the Big 12, but it does seem a little thin.
It does seem a little thin. I'm very glad you brought up Clemson because that was the team I was going to bring up as well. I was really impressed by that defensive unit this year. Again, sustaining injuries and still really holding it down. I think it's a bit unrealistic to expect their offense to be as bad as it was this season. Next season, I do think they make some improvements offensively, and with that defense playing as well did this season, get some injuries. I do like Clemson. I think Notre Dame could potentially be a dark horse as well, but like you guys said, I do think it is pretty thin.
Yeah, Notre Dame, they are good. I really like Marcus Freeman as a head coach. The players seem to love him, but I mean, I could potentially see, a wild card team sneak its way into the playoffs, maybe like an Oklahoma State. I mean, I don't want to say USC because that would make them way ahead of schedule with Lincoln Riley, but maybe USC, maybe Utah. They played great this year, so I can see a wild card team sneaking in, but I wouldn't count out Georgia. I'm scared to say Clemson because they were awful last year and they did lose their athletic director. They lost their defensive coordinator, so it's a lot of new moving parts for that football team, but I'm excited, as always, to get into college football with, a year away from the national championship.
But Sam, before we cut I forgot that when I was looking at a thing about this earlier in the week, projecting the top 25 next year, I remember seeing someone very high on A&M, and A&M has a lot of players that have come into the program they have the number 1 recruiting class this year. They've had a lot of talent on a Georgia level, Ohio State, Bama level come in, and who knows if they're a playoff team, but I wonder if they're good enough to beat a Georgia or Bama during the regular season, make things interesting, and keep the playoff to one SEC team, which who knows if there's team. We saw them against Ohio State, Sam. Utah looks good, but I don't know if they're going to be able to get to, undefeated or 1 loss through the whole season and then be a conference champion, but they could be good enough to make the playoffs. There seems like there's a lot of teams, but they got to put it together.
I mean, I'm not like very high on Utah. I just say I'm thinking like this can be a year that a wild card team sneaks in. I know this year we saw someone like Cincinnati. I know they were dominant. They snuck in, but I think there's a lot of unknowns going into next year with different teams. So it's gonna be interesting to see. And Notre Dame, I feel like I'm not Notre Dame. I'm sorry, Texas A&M. I feel like they always put a great recruiting class together. They always have a good team on the field, but they always fall apart at some point during the season. Jimbo is kind of hard to sustain a winning, a solid season under him.
Yeah, I just have one more thing to add about that before we talk about the NFL wildcard weekend. I think the college football committee, the board that decides who makes the playoffs, kind of liked putting in Cincinnati this year just to make an example out of them where they think in their rationalization. I'm not saying I agree or disagree with this, but hey guys, look, this dominant team who isn't one of these top dogs in terms of talent acquisition, we let them into the playoffs and they really didn't perform up to par. So we next year are going to favor a team with 1 or 2 losses who has played really great talent over a team like Cincinnati who had a great season but didn't have those marquee wins like some other teams I think will next year.
It'll be very interesting to see how the playoffs moving forward with finally a 5 team making it. But moving into our next segment, we have Super Wildcard Weekend coming up. We have a Monday night game for the first time ever, which I'm not a fan of. I think playoff football should be on the weekend and not on Monday night.
Yeah,
that's that's just my opinion. I think you guys agree as well. So our first game, we have the Raiders at the Bengals. The Raiders just come off, a playoff game basically against the Chargers. The Bengals are coming off resting Joe Burrow, resting a lot of their starters. This is the first, the Bengals haven't made the playoffs in a while. They haven't won a playoff game since 1991, but I'm going to chalk them down as a W. I think the Bengals are going to win this game. I think the Raiders, they went all in last week. They, exerted a lot of energy. I just think, the Bengals aren't going to roll over. They're, a different feeling of a team. They don't have Carson Palmer at quarterback. They don't have Andy Dalton. They have, national championship winner Joe Burrow. So I'm going to go with the Bengals winning their first playoff game since 1991.
I like that, Sam. I actually am nervous. I'm the opposite of you. I'm nervous that they come out flat because of their coach, and I'm not a big fan of their coach. I feel like Joe Burrow has given their coach a whole new lifespan now, because who expected them to get this far this year? I mean, who expected Lamar Jackson to miss the 6 games, whatever, but that spot would probably be gone. But Joe Burrow I'm going to go with the Bengals though, because I think Joe Burrow is that guy. He is that good where he can put the team on his back in a playoff game, a sloppy playoff game where not a lot's going your way. And I'm just not a big believer in Derek Carr, even though he's been getting it done. He does a lot for what he doesn't have. He doesn't rub off on me like that. I just don't see it.
Yeah, and with Carr, you can't say, oh, he has more playoff experience than Burrow. That's not true. These guys are both making their first playoff start, and Burrow obviously has more significant kind of time in bigger games, in my opinion, going back to college. Whereas Derek Carr, I think it is a syndrome of they had their playoff game week 18. That was their playoff game. That was their win. And now they kind of exerted all their energy, showed all their cards, and now they're going to come in a little bit flat. But I will say, even though I think the Bengals are going to win this game, I'm very nervous for the Bengals. I think it's a bad matchup for the Bengals. I think that the Raiders have a very good pass, and the Bengals have a below average pass protection unit. And I could see a situation where this game is very close because the Raiders dominate the line of scrimmage. So I am a little bit nervous about that aspect, but I do think the Bengals are going to win.
I just think, I think this Bengals defense is very solid. I think they're going to be able to shut down the Raiders offense and put pressure on Derek Carr. We have, Sam Hubbard, what's his name? Trey Henderson. Is that his name? I might be. Yeah, Hendrickson. Yeah, I think they're going to be able to put pressure on him. I don't think Josh Jacobs is going to be able to run the ball. And, their passing is very, hit or miss. I just think if you're I love Hunter Renfrow, but if you're relying on him to be your number one receiver, that's a little bit worrisome.
Yeah, and also how is Vegas going to stop Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd?
Right.
That's why I was excited that the Patriots didn't have to play them, because if the Chargers won, they would have to play the Bengals. And I mean, I still don't think they're going to beat Buffalo, but not to cut into that segment. But I was like thinking about how does any secondary that doesn't have two solid corners and a safety who can obviously not only cover the field well, but at least, lead and call out, adjust to these guys, all that stuff. I mean, if you don't have any semblance of like a strong secondary, I just don't know how you stop this passing attack with anything else other than just attacking Joe Burrow every time he drops back and, rushing 5-6 people at a time.
Yeah, no, seriously. And when it comes to the Raiders, really the only chance they have at stopping guys like Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase is playing just pass coverage. And it's not like the Bengals have some bum running back in a bad running attack. They have a really good above average running game this year with Joe Mixon. So I just see the Bengals just out-talenting this team, and schematically, it's not like the Raiders have this John Gruden, just schematic genius at the helm anymore. I can see Taylor putting together a shitty game plan, because I think the Taylor-Burrow dynamic is very similar to the Aaron Rodgers, Mike McCarthy dynamic early in Rodgers' career. Also very similar to the Kyler Murray, Cliff Kingsbury dynamic, where I think all those quarterbacks are so good to the point where they extend the lives and coaching careers of these guys who I think are a bit of frauds. But regardless, I think the Bengals talent-wise will just be too much, and I expect a big game from Joe Burrow.
And let it be known, last time these teams played each other in the regular season, Week 10, the Bengals won 32-13. Getting into our next game, Patriots at Bills. I'm a little up in the air. I'm going to defer my decision to you guys, and I want to hear what you say, and then I'm going to make my decision. I'm going to do a little audible on you guys.
Nice.
Well, you want to hear my opinion, don't you, Sam? Because that you need that after your Colts no show against the Jaguars.
I don't want to talk about it.
The Patriots very much can win this game, but they just have not played well, and their key is they're so well coached that they'll have their periods after they start slow. In this last run of games against the Colts, against Buffalo the second time, and this recent game in Miami, they'll turn it on and they'll just make stops left and right, and they'll move the ball right down the field. It's like, where was this 10 minutes ago when you really needed it? They can backdoor cover, they can make it look like they were the best team the whole time. They just started slow, but I just don't see it as well. Especially against Buffalo, they can spread it all out against us, and the secondary has just been brutal with injuries, and you really just have J.C. Jackson for a speed cover guy. Jalen Mills is just not it at corner. He's just so out of his element. They clearly picked him up to be a guy who has just various roles, and now he has to be the number 2 corner. They're just so thin there that they can win. They can win in plenty of ways, cause some turnovers, just eat up on the line of scrimmage, but if Buffalo just wants to throw it all over the place, they can.
Yeah, I really love your objectivity there, Jack. Maybe that's something I'm lacking with a Cardinals prediction, a little foreshadowing there. But I'm going to list some positives out for the Patriots first. The Patriots' run defense has been very disappointing and pretty bad the last 4 weeks of the season. But the thing is, that's not something the Bills can and will take advantage of. The Bills' running back room, I think, is arguably the worst in the entire NFL. And it's really Josh Allen, be our hero. Josh Allen, lead our team in rush attempts. And I think that's going to be the case in this game. So I think some of the Patriots' weaknesses won't be exploited by the Bills. But at the same time, I'm leaning Bills, and I think the Bills are going to win this game. The Bills offensively out-talent the Patriots, but it's not just that. I'm big into weather being a factor in this game, and it's going to be sub-zero temperatures. But the thing is, the difference between the first game and this game, the first game had 40-mile-per-hour winds, and this game is going to be set at about 10-mile-per-hour winds, which is very feasible and possible to run or pass the ball in those conditions. And I just think the Bills right now are surging a little bit compared to the Patriots. And with this team, I think the offense will be able to put up a solid performance, but not good enough to the point where the Patriots defense, in my opinion, would have to be elite in this game. And I don't think it's an elite unit at the moment.
With the 10-degree weather, I think it's going to be, kind of harder to throw the ball. It's hard to throw a ball regardless of the wind when it's 10 degrees.
Yeah.
The Patriots, I think they have a better running game than the Buffalo Bills. But I just think the Bills, they're in Buffalo. If you have an inexperienced young quarterback for the Patriots, I'm leaning towards the Bills. I'm going to put this down as the Bills, but I'm going to say this is my least confident prediction that I have. I think this game can go either way. I will go Buffalo. Josh Allen's going to put on the Superman cape and escape with a W against his bitter rivals.
No, the only other thing I wanted to say, I like how Michael brought it up, talking about how Buffalo is not probably going to take advantage of the run game. And that's just, I think, what can put the Patriots back in it is Buffalo just overthinking it and trying to win it their way, or whatever strategy they pick, because obviously McDermott does not like Belichick and does not think of him that highly. I know he definitely has respect for all that he's done, but clearly he doesn't want to. There was one question asked to him that got him really mad after that first game, and you can just tell that he's gonna do what he wants to do to beat Bill Belichick, and maybe they'll run a little too much Josh Allen hero ball, but they can't really stop it. So I think I got to go Bills. And just
even though the Bills favored in this game by a couple of points, I think the Vegas sexy pick of the weekend is going to be Patriots for the underdog pick, and I think rightfully so. Again, it's like 51-49% Bills right now. It's so close. The thing is about the Patriots that makes me nervous is there's been some times throughout this season, specifically the Cowboys game and the Bucks game, where it's been 4th and 3, 4th and 2. Mac Jones win us the game, and Bill Belichick hasn't even given Mac Jones the opportunity to go out and win this game. I think there's going to be times in this game where Mac Jones is going to be put in a situation to execute, and I don't think Bill Belichick will even give him that opportunity to play a little bit of that hero ball, even if he can execute in that situation. I am a little bit worried that Buffalo saw that Week 16 game, said this is a must-win, do-or-die game. We're going to pull out every single play in our playbook. We're going to pull out every single stop to win this game, to win the division. And that's where Bill Belichick is just so incredible. When he has 2 games of film on a team, an entire season of film on his team, and just to come up with a masterful defensive performance and game plan. So I can absolutely see that happening, and I think it will to an extent. But again, I think some of the talent players on the Bills will win out against the offensive talent players on the Patriots. I just don't trust some of those guys to step up and play huge.
And that's what makes this game so tough. Bill he doesn't want to get bested twice by the Bills. This is the rubber match. It's a hard game to pick. I'm excited to watch it. This is what playoff football is all about. 10-degree weather, 2 teams that hate each other, 2 bitter rivals. I'm excited. Getting into our next game, we have the Eagles at the Buccaneers. Last time these teams played, it was 28-22 Buccaneers. Buccaneers are limping into the playoffs a little bit. Leonard Fournette's battling a hamstring injury. Mike Evans is battling a hamstring injury. But I'm going to go with the Buccaneers here. The Eagles just have inexperience, across the board, really, for the playoffs. The Buccaneers have a great defense. They're always scheming up ways, to best their opponent. And I think that they're going to, get a nice game plan to stop the run and, really take out the heart of the Eagles offense. And I'm going to go with the Buccaneers here.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with the Buccaneers as well. Not very hard for me. I do get a little nervous that the Eagles could run all over Tampa's in front, but I just think Tampa's experience is good enough to get them this game to move on to divisional. Who knows about anything more with all their injuries, but I think it was Levante David, Leonard Fournette, and Giovanni Bernard are coming off the IR for this game. And I think a big guy to watch is Bernard because they need guys who can get open short and convert those 3-yard, gotta have it situations. You need yards through the air. And Brown and Godwin being gone means that it's going to be more Fournette, as we've seen through the year. He caught way more balls than he had in any combined seasons. I mean, he got so many targets this year compared to the rest of it, the previous years of his career. So that will definitely be a part of the game plan with him. And then Giovanni Bernard will have to play a James White role for Tom Brady.
Yeah, absolutely. Vaughn has been pretty key at running back for the Bucs as well. He stepped up and played really well. I'm worried about the Bucs, but not in this game. I'm not worried about them at all in this game. I think they are going to convincingly win. Now, they are very banged up. They're thin at the receiver position, which makes me nervous for the divisional round and the NFC Championship and the Super Bowl potentially, but we're talking about wild card matchup here. I think the Eagles are, they're a legit playoff team, but I think they're the worst team to make the playoffs this season. The thing is about the Eagles is they've been so good at dominating the line of scrimmage defensively. Their defensive line has been good this season, but that's something that I think the Bucs can neutralize pretty easily and pretty handily. The Bucs offensive line has been great this season again after it was last season as well. Again, like you guys said, playoff Lenny is set to make his return. So I just think it's a pretty easy Bucs win. Outside of Devonta Smith, I don't trust Rieger and company, and I don't really trust Jalen Hurts to have a great game, even though I think he could be really good running the football in this game.
I mean, these past couple of weeks, we've seen Tom Brady, just beat teams. They're eliminated everywhere, but he's beating teams with his leadership, his knowledge on the football field. And I think this is going to be one of those games. He has way too much experience. The Eagles are just lacking so much experience. So I think it's, just a simple pick. Getting to our next game, very, very fun. If you're a football historian, this is a classic matchup that we have. We have the 49ers at the Dallas Cowboys. These teams, in the 90s, they played each other hard. The 70s, they played each other hard. I'm going to go with the upset here. I think the 49ers are going to win this football game. They just came off a playoff game last year. They're riding in. I know it's a little bit hypocritical about what I said with the Raiders playing a playoff game, but I think the 49ers have a lot of momentum going into this game. The Cowboys finished 12-5, but if you look at their wins and losses, a lot of their losses against playoff teams, and when they did beat playoff teams, it was, a field goal, 4-point game, 1-point game. So they're not beating, really good teams convincingly. People are saying, oh, this Cowboys offense can drop 50 points at any moment, but look at the teams they dropped 50 points against: the Eagles, the Washington football team. Like, they're not doing it against, really sound football teams. So I think the 49ers are going to win this game.
I am very conflicted, and I have not been able to really settle on what team I would put any gut feeling on. Money pick. I just can't. I keep going back and forth. This is by far the hardest game for me. I've been really liking Dallas as a Super Bowl team all year, on the low key, just because obviously I'm not a big Green Bay guy. I haven't believed in Aaron Rodgers, and I thought that this was Dallas's destiny to finally beat Aaron Rodgers at some point. But this matchup is brutal for them, and the Niners defense is just so fast, especially on the front. They could make Dak's life really tough, but I also think Dallas defense could shut down Jimmy G. I just don't know how Dallas stops Debo and Ayuk. I think I'm going to go Dallas, but it's not very, very confident just because I want to see Dallas get it done.
Yeah, the thing is about Dallas, if they win this game, I honestly like them to come out of the NFC. I think they are a good matchup against about every team in the NFC bracket except the 49ers. The 49ers are a bad matchup for the Cowboys, like you guys said. And I think they're a bad matchup for just about every team in this NFC bracket. I really do think this is the game where people say, damn, Kyle Shanahan is a great, great offensive mind. And Mike McCarthy just stands on the sidelines and gets red and yells at the refs all game. I'm going to have the 49ers win this game because I think the 49ers are going to dominate time of possession. the Cowboys have given up about 4.5 yards per carry this season. And with the 49ers running scheme just being absolutely incredible, using those wishbone old school backfield formations. I mean, this is really going to feel like the 1990s watching this game and the offensive style of the 49ers. And the thing is with the 49ers, what makes them different from last year is that their skill position players like Brandon Ayuk has stepped up huge at the second half of the season. Deebo Samuel is having his best season. He's been incredibly valuable. And George Kittle's healthy. So I think the skill position players on the 49ers aren't as good as the Cowboys, but I think they'll do just enough to win this football game. I think Dak is asked to do a lot, significantly more than Jimmy G. I think he'll have a good game, but not a great game. And I think we need a great Dak Prescott game to win this game.
Anything about, the 49ers and Micah Parsons for the Cowboys, like how are the Cowboys going to handle Micah Parsons? Are they like, all right, the 49ers can really run the ball. We're going to make you rush every play, or, if they make him rush, that opens options for Jimmy G to, dump it off to Deebo, dump it off to George Kittle, or you're going to have Micah, let's drop back and coverage and cover, George Kittle a little bit. Then they can just run the ball down the throat. So it's kind of tough because I know Micah Parsons is kind of the guy that fixes everything up for the Dallas Cowboys on defense. So I think, the 49ers are going to be able to neutralize Micah Parsons a little bit, and then that kind of just limits their offense, or limits their defense, I should say.
I feel like Dallas could run the ball well against the Niners if they had healthy Tony Pollard. I think that could really – I like your point, Michael, about how they need a great Dak game. I think they could win this game without that if Tony Pollard was healthy. I think this would be the game where you'd see Tony Pollard emerge as clearly the guy Dallas should be riding instead of Zeke. Zeke is still good, but he just seems so slow. And I feel like the type of, if they could, have Zeke for the Thunder and Lightning, but if they're really, really playing well as an O-line, and Tony Pollard was healthy, he'd have a couple 20-yard gashes, and that would just completely set a different tone and allow them to do so much more with the play action and getting the ball down the field to Lamb and Cooper.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Tony Pollard, again, if they can get to the divisional round, have Tony Pollard healthy, have that thunder and lightning, I think that would be huge for them going forward. But potentially not having Tony Pollard in this game, Zeke, I think, is a very good situational running back in this NFL at this point in his career. I think if I want a guy to get me 2 yards, to get me 3 yards, to hit the hole hard and fall forward, I think Zeke is still really good at that. But just as that explosive play guy, there's so many Tony Pollard plays where he just busts through the defense and gets a 30-yard run, where I look at that play and I go, Zeke probably would have gotten about 8 yards on that play. So I do think that's a pretty significant factor in this game. Again, I would not be surprised if the Cowboys skill position players absolutely just won out. I do worry about Amari Cooper and the physicality of playoff football, the physicality of this 49ers defense. Again, even though the secondary is not very good for the 49ers, and I think the Cowboys will take advantage of that, it's just the bump and run, press heavy style is not very indicative of Amari Cooper having his best game.
Moving on to our next game, and somehow the Sunday Night Football game being the worst playoff game on the slate. We have the Steelers at the Kansas City Chiefs. Last time these teams played, it was 36-10 Chiefs. The Steelers really couldn't get anything going on offense. They just got dominated all over the field. The Chiefs are going to win this game. I think it's going to be a pretty large margin victory. Big Ben's last game in a Steelers uniform.
Yeah, I think it seems like an easy Chiefs win. I feel like Pittsburgh could catch Kansas City off guard, and they've played hard for Big Ben. They clearly have rallied around him in his last year, but even if Kansas City doesn't show up for the first half, you know that they have the firepower to erase any lead that the Steelers gain on them just like that. So it's easy, Kansas City.
Yeah, this is an easy Kansas City win. The thing is, for me about Kansas City, I think the most underrated position group on any team in all of football right now is the Chiefs' offensive line. Their tackles, Orlando Brown Jr. and Andrew Wiley, have been great this season, and I do think they'll be able to somewhat neutralize TJ Watt. Now, I would not be surprised if TJ Watt gets 1 or 2 sacks in this game, but the thing about TJ Watt is, and I think he had a great season. I think he deserves Defensive Player of the Year, but TJ Watt had a lot of 3-sack games this year, 2-sack games this year, and a lot of 0-sack games this year. I want to say per PFF, he was 12th in pressures. So even though he tied the single season sack record, if not broke it, I believe he tied it. The pressures weren't quite there for him to suggest he was this dominant every single down the edge rusher, where we saw in that Browns playoff game last year, he was completely neutralized. We've seen sometimes this season he's been neutralized by good pass protection units, and I think this Chiefs offensive line is good enough to neutralize the best part of the Steelers team. And outside of that, the Steelers don't really have a chance.
Moving into our last game, and I want to delegate Michael to talking first about this game. We have the Cardinals at the Rams. They split the regular season games. Michael, I'll give you the floor.
Man, the regular season games were tough. It was kind of a blowout for the Cardinals the first game, and then the second game was kind of a Rams blowout. I'm going to have the Cardinals win in this game, and here's some central points why. I think Kyler Murray is going to have to play amazing, arguably the best quarterback performance of the weekend outside of Josh Allen in order to win this game. I think he will play very well. I think a key matchup to look for is Rodney Hudson, our center, against Aaron Donald. I think that's going to be huge. He's played well against him this season. He only had one game against him this season, and in that game, he played well. I think some of the strong points of the Rams team in the past, like their run game, has been really bad to close out the season. And talented guys on their defense, like Jalen Ramsey, has been used very questionably this season. They've had him in a lot of zone coverage, staying in his side of the field rather than chasing him around with the best receiver. I think he's going to be guarding AJ Green, Antoine Wesley the entire game. And I think that's a disgustingly huge waste of his talent. So I think with those factors in mind, I do think the Cardinals are going to edge out this game.
I like those points, Mike. I do feel like the Rams are going to have a much easier time not having to worry about Hopkins, and maybe some of the ways they want to run Ramsey could actually benefit him, because Hopkins isn't it. I mean, you might know this. Isn't it kind of a thing that Hopkins tears him up? They've played each other like 8 or 9 times, and he usually loses the battle. And I think that's just so obviously not having your number one receiver. But in this game with Ramsey, it just seems like it means so much more. And I just have faith in Matt Stafford getting one playoff win. So I don't know if they do anything else after, but I feel like the Rams win this game, and they have I don't think the disappointment will come from losing to the Cardinals on wildcard weekend. I think they get to the divisional and then find a way to lose to Green Bay or Tampa Bay, one of those teams with the all-time quarterback. That just seems how they go out.
Once upon a time, I had the Rams being my Super Bowl team out of the NFC at the beginning of the year. But, these past couple of weeks, they have just been, scraping by the hair on their chin. Last week, they lost not really important for them because they ended up winning the division anyway, but they lost, a playoff, level game against the 49ers. Matthew Stafford, I think the lights are just a little too bright for him a lot in these scenarios. I think the Cardinals are going to win here. I think we need to expect a big game out of someone like James Conner and someone like Chase Edmonds, because the Cardinals could not rely on Kyler Murray to, being the lead running back figure for this offense, because he's gonna have to do a lot with his arm. So I think they need to have their running backs have a big game, and I think they're going to need to dominate the line of scrimmage, because they can't let Aaron Donald be a game wrecker like Michael alluded to earlier.
Yeah, I gotta say, I think this is one of those games where after the first 3 possessions of the game, I'll go, oh shit, the Rams are obviously going to win this game, or oh shit, the Cardinals are clearly going to win this game. I think very early on in this game, if the Rams are able to establish the run and not have Matt Stafford throw 40 times a game, make those mistakes he's had throughout the entire season, leading the league in pick sixes, I think if they could run the ball the first possession or 2 of the game, I'll be like, okay, the Rams are going to win this game. But I think if the Cardinals defense is able to neutralize the run game, which I do think they will be able to do, I don't trust Matt Stafford quite yet to win a playoff game where he's throwing the ball 40, 45 times in a game. The thing about Matt Stafford that has kind of been an untold truth is in 2014, in Matt Stafford's best season in terms of win percentage, I want to say they won 11 games that year. Their offensive rating was 17th in the league, and their defensive rating was 3rd in the league. It was that Detroit defense with Ndamukong Suh and company who really led that team to that playoff run, not Matt Stafford. And Matt Stafford really didn't show up in that playoff run, even though the Lions defense played pretty well in that game against Dallas. So I think a similar situation can ensue where Matt Stafford quite just doesn't step up to the plate. And I think Cliff Kingsbury is not as good of a coach as Sean McVay, very clearly, very obviously. But I think if he could put together 80% of the game plan that Sean McVay does, I think the Cardinals will be able to win.
I do get nervous that the Rams' lack of dynamic running backs is going to hurt them. I think that's a thing that a lot of good quarterbacks like to lean on is their ability to run the ball with their dynamic running backs and just dump the ball off to their dynamic running backs and have them get 5 yards. And just not having that for Matthew Stafford is definitely going to lead to him to have 1 or 2 plays like that one to end the Niners game last week with the interception, and just kind of, just too many times where it's like, oh, we got to throw it up, and careless mistakes. I think you're right, Mike. Matthew Stafford is definitely. I like how they went and got him because it gave them a chance, but they didn't really have any other options. Like, they had to get a new quarterback, but you're not going to go get a Kyler Murray or do something like that in the draft, Josh Allen, which is what your ideal scenario is. But he's going to go down to either an all-time great or what they should have done and just drafted a quarterback. So I'm interested to see how it works out for Matthew Stafford, just being the guy who could never get it done.
One more point I want to bring up. I'm worried about, the Cardinals secondary in this game, especially Byron Murphy. If you go back to the Cowboys game, I mean, he got absolutely cooked like most of the game. And I think this game, he's their number 1 cornerback, so he's going to have to match up against Cooper Kupp. So are they going to be able to contain him? And even if they are, they still got to worry about, someone like Odell, who's been emerging these past couple weeks, and Van Jefferson, who's, a sneaky target. He's just a solid receiver. So it's the Cardinals need to have a really solid game plan going into this game.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very weird because Byron Murphy was our best defender the first 5-6 weeks of the season. He was really, really good. He was kind of molding into a solid number 2, debatably a low-end number 1 starter. And now he gets injured at the middle of the season. And then when he comes back, he just has not been good. He's been a below league average corner, and all these corners are below league average corners. That's why we lost to the Seahawks last week. That's why their passing attack just absolutely shredded us. So that's definitely a significant concern in this game. Even with some of the injuries the Rams have had and have endured. But again, I think situations like Jalen Ramsey not being utilized, not being put in the slot this season, being strictly an outside corner when our best 2 receivers are Rondale Moore and Christian Kirk. Rondale Moore making his return for the first time in a couple of weeks. Those guys in the slot, I think we'll be able to do just enough against guys like Darius Williams, Jordan Fuller, and company for the Rams secondary.
Hey, who knows? Maybe Eric Weddle will come out of retirement and be a superstar on Monday night.
That's true. That made me so mad when I saw that news. I was like, God damn it. Why is everyone trying to stack for the Rams? Again, like Sam said, I had the Rams as my Super Bowl favorites, like pretty significantly. I was pretty confident in the Rams Super Bowl odds, and they could still definitely make a run and go on the Super Bowl. But again, this is one of those like 51-49 games that I'm leaning on the Cardinals. But hot take, I think this game will be won by 10 points or more, whether it be the Rams or the Cardinals.
Everybody for listening. We hope you enjoyed our national championship recap and our wildcard weekend predictions. We will see you in the next one.